read the books. I know you have. You've got the highlights, the dog-eared pages, the notes in the margins. Heck, you maybe have a whole shelf up with them. Maybe you've got a Kindle full of self-help books. You know, the ones about habits, about mindset, about healing your nervous system, about becoming the person that you really want to be. And I'm guessing at least some of them were really good and very helpful, as in like genuinely good. The kind where you're reading and you're nodding and you're thinking, yeah, this is exactly it. This is exactly what I'm going through, what's been happening to me. You get that feeling of recognition, that aha, that sense that someone finally put the words to the thing you've been carrying around for years. And then nothing changed. You put the book down, maybe you told a friend about it, maybe you bought another one. And the thing the book was supposed to change or fix, it's still there. It's still running, it's still doing exactly what it was doing before you read 400 pages about why it shouldn't be doing that anymore. That's what I want to talk about today. Not which books are bad or which ones are good, not whether the information is accurate or useful. Just this one question that nobody in the self-help world seems to be asking. Why doesn't insight change? Because here's the thing, it should, right? That's the whole premise the entire industry is built on. You understand something and the understanding shifts you. You see the pattern and the seeing breaks the pattern. You get the aha and your life reorganizes itself around this new awareness. Except it doesn't always work that way. And if you've been doing any kind of personal growth work, any reading, any therapy, any podcast listening, any journal, you already know this. You've already lived this. You've had the insight. Probably dozens of them. And you're still doing the thing you had the insight about. So what's actually going on? I want to give you the real answer, not the sort of like the motivational version, the mechanistic one. Because once you understand why insight doesn't change you, you can stop wasting time doing the thing that doesn't work and start doing the thing that actually does work. Here it is. Your insight and your behavior live in different parts of those parts don't communicate the way you think they do. Stay with me here because this is the whole thing. When you read something that clicks, when you have that aha moment, when you finally feel like you understand your pattern, when the therapist says that thing that makes everything sort of click, that's all happening in your prefrontal cortex. That's a prefrontal cortex experience. That's the youngest, the newest, the most recently evolved part of your brain, and that lights up. It's the part that does language and logic, analysis, planning, abstract reasoning, art, that sort of thing. It's the part that reads books and takes notes and goes, yes, this resonates deeply with me. It's a remarkable part of your brain and really what sets us apart from any other creatures. But it is not where your behavior, your actions, the reactive stuff, the pattern you can't seem to stop, the way you shut down in conflict or blow up over small things or reach for the drink or scroll or the food before you've even made a conscious decision. That stuff is running from somewhere much older and much deeper. Here's the basic biology. Your nervous system's number one job is to keep you alive. Not to keep you happy, not to keep you connected, not to keep you fulfilled. Just alive. And it is very, very good at that job. It has been doing that job for a long time. Long before you were born. And it learned how to do it long before you had language. Long before you had a prefrontal cortex sophisticated enough to read a book about nervous system regulation. Most of what's running your behavior right now was programmed before you were 7 years old. It's true. You absorbed and downloaded beliefs about safety, about trust, about whether the world was going to meet your needs before you had any conscious filter at all. Before you could evaluate whether those beliefs were accurate. Those programs, they're still running every day, all day. They run beneath your awareness. They're quietly shaping every reaction you have. So here's the problem. You're reading books written in the language of logic, the language of the prefrontal cortex. And you're trying to use that logic to rewrite programs that don't speak that language at all. Those programs speak the language of sensation, the language of felt experience, of what your body learned before you had any words for it. It's like sending an email to someone who's never had internet access. You can write the most eloquent, perfectly reasoned email in the world, but it doesn't matter. The person is never gonna receive it. They don't have internet access. The message just never gets there. Your insight is that email. Your nervous system's programming is the person with no internet access. And here's where it gets a little uncomfortable, especially if you've invested a lot of time and money in the self-help. The industry has sold you a lie. Not maliciously. I don't think it's a conspiracy, but the premise underneath almost every book, every seminar, every podcast is this. If you understand yourself well enough, change follows automatically. That awareness is transformation, that insight is the destination. And I'm sorry, but it just isn't. And it's not because the information is wrong. A lot of it is right. But information delivered to your prefrontal cortex does not automatically transmit to parts of your nervous system that are running the show in the context of what we're talking about. Books aren't useless. I love books. And reading isn't pointless. I've written books. I'm obviously not anti-book. The framework matters, though. Understanding what's happening inside you is genuinely valuable. It is maybe even a requirement. You need the map. But there's a difference between understanding a map and actually walking the territory. And what I see happen over and over and over again with clients, with people in my community, honestly with myself at different points, is that we treat reading as the work. We treat the insight as the destination. We have this aha moment and we file it under things I've handled. And we move on to the next book, the next framework, the next video, the next thing that might finally be the one that makes everything work out and click into place. And the pattern keeps running because the pattern was never stored in the part of the brain that reads. Let me show you how this actually plays out in real life. So you're in a conflict with your partner or your boss or your kid, whatever. And somewhere in that conflict, you do the thing, whatever that thing is. You shut down or you escalate or you go cold or you get sarcastic or you disappear or you call names, whatever. You've probably had a lot of insight about your thing. You probably know where it came from. You can probably draw a line and trace it back to something specific or maybe a person specific. Maybe you've been in therapy talking about it for months or years. You might even know in real time that you're doing it. You might even see it when you're doing it, and you do it anyway. That's not a knowledge problem. This is not a situation where one more book about attachment styles would have changed the outcome. You didn't need more information in that moment. You needed your nervous system to be operating from a different place. And your nervous system does not care what you've read, what's in your brain. Here's another version of this. And this one might sting a little. People who spend a lot of time in the personal growth world, and again, I include myself here, can get extremely sophisticated about their dysfunction. They can explain their avoidant attachment with remarkable clarity and pretty impressive precision. They can map out their childhood wounding, name the adaptive strategies they developed. They can articulate the exact flavor of their nervous system dysregulation. The self-awareness is genuine and real. The language is beautiful and it's accurate, and none of it has moved the needle on the actual behavior. Because insight without action is just a more articulate version of being stuck. I don't say that to be harsh. I say it because I think it's one of the more useful things I can offer you. You are not broken because you've had the insight and still can't change the pattern. You're not weak, you're not failing, you're not doing it wrong. You're just applying the wrong tool to the problem. You're sending emails to someone who doesn't have internet access. and wondering why they're not responding to your beautifully written email. So what actually works? Here's where I want to bring in something from the 12-step world, because they figured this out a long time ago. And I think the rest of us are slow to catch up in this way. There's a saying that gets passed around in those 12-step rooms, and it's something like this. You can't think your way to better actions, but you can act your way to better thinking. You can't think your way to better actions, but you can act your way to better thinking, because it completely inverts the premise you've been operating under. We have been living as if better thinking produces better action, as if the insight comes first and the behavior follows, as if the path goes like this: understanding the pattern, then change the pattern. That's not how the nervous system works. That's not how deep behavioral change actually happens. What works is actually the reverse. You take the action first before the thinking catches up, before it feels right or feels natural, before you're ready, and certainly before it's comfortable. You do the thing differently in the specific moment when you used to do it the old way, right? And over time, through that repeated action, your thinking actually changes. Your nervous system updates its model of what's safe, what's possible, what you're capable of. The feelings follow the behavior, not the other way around. That's the mechanism. And the 12-step world has been building communities around this principle for a couple of generations now, while the self-help publishing industry keeps selling us more insight. Now, let me be clear. Let me make this really precise, because I'm not talking about random action. I'm not saying just go do stuff and see what happens, although there's some value in experimentation. The action that changes you is intentional, specific, and repeated over time. Intentional means it's aimed at the pattern you're trying to interrupt. You know what you're doing and why. You're not just busy, you're targeted. Specific means it happens in the actual moment, like the moment where the old pattern wants to fire. It's not in a journaling session about the pattern, not in a therapy session analyzing the pattern. In the real moment, in real life, when the pattern is pulling you in that old familiar direction. And repeated over time means you don't do it once and call it done. You do it again and again, because the nervous system changes through accumulated experience, not single events. Consistent action creates change. Consistent change over time creates deep transformation. That's the sequence. That's what the books aren't telling you, or if they are, they're burying it under enough inspiring language that it doesn't land. Here's what this looks like concretely. Say, for example, your pattern is shutting down in conflict. You go cold and quiet when things get hard. You've read about it. You know it's a protective response. You can probably trace it to something early, some moment when speaking up wasn't safe and going silent was survival. Maybe you can tie it to your mother or your father or your siblings. That's great. That understanding is the map. Now what? The action is staying in the room when every part of you wants to leave. Not doing it perfectly, not without fear, not without tears, not because it feels natural or comfortable or right. Staying in the room specifically because it doesn't feel comfortable. Because that discomfort is where the old program is. You stay. The conflict ends. You're still okay. The thing you were bracing for didn't happen. And your nervous system receives that data as it can actually use it. Then you do it again the next time, and the next time after that. Not because a book told you to, because you're giving your nervous system repeated experiences that contradict what it thought it knew. And over time, not overnight, not as fast as you would like, or I would like, the system updates. You create new neural pathways. It starts to recognize that this particular flavor of discomfort isn't actually the threat it thought it was. The thinking changes because the action changed first. That's the whole thing. That's what the 12-step people have been doing for decades. They've been acting their way to better thinking, not the other way around. Now, I think part of why we stay in insight mode, why we keep reaching for the next book or the next framework or the next conversation that might finally unlock something, is because it feels like progress without any risk. Reading is safe. Understanding is safe. You can spend years getting clearer and clearer on your patterns without ever having to confront them in real time. But when you're doing the actual work, the behavioral work, the staying in the room work, the catching yourself mid-pattern work, you're going to fail sometimes. And at the beginning, you're going to fail a lot. You're going to have all the insight in the world. You can have all the insight in the world and still shut down anyway, or snap anyway, or reach for the thing you said you weren't going to reach for. And here's the thing. That failure is part of the mechanism. It's part of the game. The trying and failing, trying and falling short, and trying again and again is exactly how new neural pathways get laid down. It's not through understanding, it's through doing. And the discomfort of doing it imperfect is not a sign that you're failing. It's actually a sign that you're doing the work, actually in the work. The map doesn't change the territory. Walking changes it, one step at a time, repeated enough times that a new path forms. So here's what I want you, here's what I want to leave you. Whatever pattern you've been reading about, thinking about, developing insight about, I want you to ask yourself a different question. Not, do I understand this? Because you probably do. You could probably give a seminar. You probably understand it really, really well. I want you to ask this. What's the specific action I would need to take in the specific moment the pattern shows up in order to do something different? Not the grand version, the smallest possible version. Because the nervous system doesn't update in the abstract. It updates in the specific, repeated, real moments when you choose differently. When you act differently before your thinking has had a chance to catch up and survive it. You can't think your way to better action, but you can act your way to better thinking. The books pointed at something real. The insight is the beginning. It's really important, but it's not the destination. The map is useful, critically, but at some point you have to put down the map and start walking.